So before we begin, I would like to thank a few people, without who I wouldn't be here right now. I've been dreaming about giving this speech for a while, and I'm really happy to have this opportunity with a great partner against some of my best friends. So I want to start by thanking my parents, whose support has made it possible for me to compete at the level that I've been doing. They're always asking me like, why didn't I make it one elim further? And they've supported me in like every decision surrounding debate, even though it's taken like years off my life. Thank you to Greenhill Debate and the administration for all their support over the last 4 years. My coaches, Mr. Timmons, Mr. Fitzpatrick, Mr. Paramo, and Dr. Chase. Whether it's to talk about life, whether it's when I have nothing to do at school and want to hang out in the debate room, they've always been there for me and they've supported me. Thank you to all of the assistant coaches who've helped us all year. Dustin, he has a full-time job, but he's come to 16 tournaments with us this year. John, LJ, Sam Gustafson, Sam Short, Christina, Zahir, who couldn't be here, but still helped me instrumentally and is kind of like an older brother and a role model for me. Temi Tope, Eli, Elizabeth, Anish Madison, who is my first partner at my first TOC, and to Asia for all their help this weekend. I don't know what I would do without debate. Like, I still remember my first moments in camp when I met people like Jerry, like during the icebreaker session, like ate with all my friends at Mojo, when I was trying to talk at 400 words per minute as a freshman, and you know, even when I've lost early in some tournaments and gave up all hope, you know, still pushed through it. I want to thank the Michigan debate team, Eleanor, Avi, Connor. They've been helping me all day. They're very supportive, and the next 4 years will be very fun. Thank you to all my teammates, Harris, Sneha, Dia, Maya, Ilion, Varun, Sarah, Sherry, Seda, Dylan, Aaron, Aditi, and more who I may be forgetting. You know, I love our team because it's not like divided into sects like policy, LD, and world schools, but everyone is close, supports each other. You know, I love hanging out in the debate room with y'all, getting food, talking about different topics together, and I kind of feel at home in our debate room. Thank you to all my friends that I've made in debate. It's crazy how like these 3 days of competitive debate over time have made us into such good friends. Like, I'm gonna list them actually. So Jordan, Pranav, Michael, Aiden, Bilal, Dylan, Cubney, Russell, Jerry, Ayush, Asrit, Sid, Essen, Ishan, Samir, Anish, Mike, Brandon, Christian, the Lhasa coaching squad, people like Arnav, Raleigh, Sahil, Delais. I mean, I still remember calling Pranav's days on end just to help me with my college decision. I remember disturbing every RA with these people at 3 a.m., specifically Jay, or when we're all like 1 hour late to lab, or like when we're all 1 hour late to lab, me and Michael haven't woke up yet, so we just like called in sick. I mean, I love y'all so much, whether it's like doing things like playing Fortnite or doing things about competition. And even though we're separated by thousands of miles, you guys are like my best friends, and I hope we're all together in such a setting again. Thank you to the TOC TAB staff for running such a smooth tournament. It's been a great experience. To the judges who we've had all season and all tournament, who gave us great feedback and decisions, and to the judges who are still here after 3 very long days to decide this debate. I know Ariel had to come from both days, so. Finally, thank you to Lori. You've been an amazing partner the last 2 years. The amount of work you do to support our entire team is invaluable, and I've had the greatest time debating with you. There's not a harder working 2A in the country, and I know that they're going to do great next year. Did everyone get the one? Jerry, yeah. Oh, you are. Okay. Are you all good? The advantages, appropriation, subsequent corporate law subscribes to a violent history of dispossession, read 21 corporate club arms, as long as what we're requiring be running a fixed days works, not recorded but in collective memory, get the culture and public domain appropriate way, but even with the burden of large amount of cultural people, eligible for protection, born culture for education purposes, common industry, communities, other purposes, offensive, authorities, holding first assumption, reproduction, dotting, cutting, prime form, appropriation, causing of harm, through dispossession, appropriations, ongoing and only intensifying, read 21, culture remains sovereignty and corporate fields protecting its currency, divesting, autonomy, self-determination, actively dispossessing its culture, excluded cultural value, public domain, the unauthorized taking a form, calculus, legitimized use, settlers, state, the appropriation without free, farm, informed consent, descendants, continuation, colonialism, combat psychological, political harm, failure, risk, inflicting harm, generations, humiliation, violence, discrimination, diminished sovereignty, safeguard, management, authority, and cultural sovereignty, unless the people control production, prostitution, sovereignty, police, bleak, conversion, sovereignty, settler properties, conquest. The second factor is consistently left out of court, fair use, interpretation. Read 21. Is people should rely on copyright, fair use permits on authorities use when public interest always holds interest. Holder has a right permit to reproducing right is limited. Of course, focus on whether work is transformative, commercial, non-profit, interest in item value, amount usable, touch of nature, work itself, cultural works, place, and role determining appropriation. A work be coffee, key cuts, or inquiry for adjudicating justice. The appropriation for the relations of production, inquiry, and study form, and intellectual value, integral to nature, inquiry has been reduced to irrelevance. Read 21. Non-distinction should analyze the second various factor. Should people recognize to whether work is published, whether the work is created factual, whether material is created factual. Survival is on the court, the factor nature, special nature was a little consequence. Second factor, interest lines other various factors, but as little form aspect nature for close unauthorized use in sports, reduce considerations, matter question, or whether appropriate work is created or factual, courts simply dismiss. The second factor, courts cannot apply it totally inadequate for adjudicating cultural appropriation. Read 21. As groups assert the rights, creativity, and contest will be a little bit fitted to decide complex cultural appropriation in religious strongly gender. The district courts shall identify true nature, short documents, reach opposite conclusions, terms and works are left in appropriation limbo. As judges try to figure out proximity to copyright score, ambivalent interest is out there, analysis, ways specific harms appropriation causes against public interest. Centering the second various factor solves. Read 21. Second factor should protect authorship, examine creative environment to understand expectations, analyze unauthorized use, impact, incentives, weigh against fair use, requiring purpose, consult, communities, consultation, allow for fair users and courts exposed to determine the work from data's point of view, take precautions to ensure interests protect and comply with individual communities. Court assess whether unauthorized use of motivation, framing natures on possible, examine context, has shown privilege, European settler culture, unauthorized parts have been relations, go versus Oracle, indicate movement towards such an approach, observing how work is generated, function, valued, should be proven or appropriation, allow to see how work is valued. Copyright's key first must be amended, and the alternative is implicit in exclusion. Read 21. Current fair use will be a little benefit to judges who works in left in appropriate limbo, judge for proximity to copyright genres inherently factual. Carbon second various factor has been written out. Rehabilitate fair use as a concept, selling appropriation, rehabilitation is nature to meaning. It is works within copyrights fair use. Those who account for diversity, copyright must evolve. Concerns for applicability are overblown and easy to overcome. Fight test 3. Originality, not value, and start regulatory for production. Original means only the work is independently creative and it possesses some creativity. Bulk or sufficient past threshold works left tangible fixation to event face start date. Impossible is that term does not begin. Copyright laws are flexible to work special status in this. Our work fixation is used by proof legislative. Copyright must appropriate legal system harmonization, international recognition, archable. Provide appropriate remedies against infringement, proof protection, enforcement of national values to the limited confines. Establishing ownership, deciding who represents rights in this people, government, private entity can be responsible. The plan is a safe haven that's being pushed for Farley 97. Tough the cultural symbols represents fine below. The civilization, art, fundamental cultural identity, those should weights meaning each time heritage is with people. It is good, solid legal redress, who should willing pressure, who actually have IPR from which they feel excluded from. They authorize certain uses, license, practicalities, and want copyright take back their culture. Some use IP prevent cultural harm. Expropriation will cause imagery to lose original significance, lead to a dissolution of culture. IP is key. The status quo operates under a guise of globalization. Smith zeros. Expansion to 4 zeros of change. Colonization did not end boundaries that shaped understandings. Collapsing Western understandings and now become dominant. Increased modification of culture. Globalization means opening up markets, provides access to cultural practices, opting not only decide people out to future noted in societies. Our Oracle dumps every decide link. Read 21 and goes to Oracle because the code non-autonomy innovate. Court found not merit the court found it did not merit protection. Call for back in the factory distinction. Previously established every act of appropriation is one step closer to the extinction of heritage. Code 99 commercialization taking control in this culture and social property laws been linear for protecting these people. Commercialization and these studies on the self-examined ever horticultural heritage on real soil. Each on heritage has with the people. The most urgent is to preserve culture known to maintain the vitality. Thus, the plan of the United States the government should strengthen its protection of copyright by using the second various factor to examine the context of work in its creative environment and the potential impact of others' appropriation. Existential risk analysis is statistically impossible and just by genocide to 21. Calculating every try as we said the only about what happened without any evidence for preventing for helping which not spent too much time. The rest of it we do not know is possible leading towards skepticism, reducing risk by 1 billion to 1 billion to 1 percentage point 100 billion knowledge genocide 1 billion people, and playing to conscious search limits of any means deciding how we should act. Last term is the idea that extinction is worth more than needed justice. Small sample size bias without liability means one should not read too much to expert service. Problems that treat assigned to policy. The field's moderate receive considerable funding from tech billionaires. The compete with disciplines about crushing oppression actions towards analysis, not risk analysis, finding possibility dependent versus permanent radical probability rather than previous calculations to evaluate humans quantitatively and capable of restriction from eugenics. The existential probabilities is with debation is something impossible. Utilitarianism justifies exploitation of indigenous communities for Washington Day rejected Smith 87 genocide. The consequences of any constitution. The destroying indigenous people push towards extinction. The utilitarian genocide become prominent. The Americas become pronounced. Indigenous people subject to genocide attacks and name of development. Some persons society as live tends to be total. Or our action-based methodology of advocacy, impact assessments, and effects of solvency of proposals best centers in his knowledge and protects heritage values. Readington 21. Advocate for development is sustainable methodology and making sure that there are standards research. You cannot just do the research and keep inaccessible their value to the community. Valuable information in almost all interviews are not true for First Nations community should be able to choose what can be done with them. Matter of community building, pride and belonging, impact assessments to evaluate impact of Aboriginal rights, cultural practices, heritage values. They need to report on which heritage values they consider in the face of proposed development, how proposed development would adversely affect culture in ways to mitigate the effects. They want to know what effects will occur if the plan goes ahead. Information has so many uses. We want to use it more indigenous centered. If we rely on participation-based action, myth-based methodologies, we work with the community to address them. help them achieve their goals. Developers have to do the project possible so the calculus is self-fulfilling and psychologically bent from Montgomery 20th. Neurogeneration to the expense of commonplace ones. Priorities become distorted by overemphasizing extreme scenarios. 90% of worst scenarios are assumed by a surprise attack. Worst case planning may increase probability of negative events leading to hair trigger alert, increasing accidental use. The hypervigilance around rocks due to 1% doctrine is a tragic example influenced by other prior beliefs. Metaphors for outcomes and risk distilling knowledge. Reagan's nuclear dangers resulting from psychological factors. Our political choices matter. Care for the world around us is not moral grandstanding, but the foundation of social agency and collective action. That's Scarlo 13. Care is a political concept that sensitizes that include formulation on which institution can be built. It touches them upon concerns that the world can share, recognize relationships as a source of motivation and responsiveness, construction of power and knowledge relevant to not only small scale or existing personal attachments, but also to IR. It extends to a sense of institutional structural across society. Societal agency can inspire careful judgment and collective action. Alternatively, multiply the probability by the natural log of magnitude of Levine. 11. Logarithmically scaled axis alleviate range compression likelihood times consequences axis or ordinal whose operations are rational. No way to distinguish between a high likelihood meeting consequence linear axis lumps together very dissimilar with logarithmic bins. Differentiate between large dynamic ranges. See, logarithmic matrix has finite range, of course, even if different losses may not be differentiated. Go back to the advantage. Anti-plane research creates a confused, rudderless, and cyclical youth. That's Fernandez. 24. Imagining a future where people can thrive beyond mere survival begins with engineering design experiments. Without new visions, we do not know what to build, only know what to knock down. We end up confused, rudderless, cyclical. Political action can help organizers develop understanding of mechanisms of power. Understanding is not enough. Consciousness must be facilitated alongside actions that can shape the real world. Activities contributed to role-playing. Narratives about how they would express demands and what they desire to see actualized. Activities that fostered imagination or valuable activities motivate them to continue their action and organize help foster radical hope and persistence to remain engaged in a way that was sustainable. Radical hope enables political action. Having a practical vision can increase collective action. Debate enabled organizers to translate research into political action. Fiat's use of fiat is not equivalent to role-playing the state, and we understand the limits of the activity, but the use of fiat can facilitate the enrichment of student research, education, and depth of political understanding. That is demonstrated by the investment of countless hours of research and argument refinement necessary to produce this round. A generic critique of fiat does not respond to the specificity of the 1EC or work of the debaters defending it. Fiat does not pretend the world can be made perfect, nor does it participate in narratives of infinite linear progress. Fiat is a contingent response of colonization and indigenous genocide as it appears in intellectual property, provides a view of potential progress that indigenous communities can embrace if they choose. It should not be rejected by the word of the law or Northview without an account of indigenous demands. Only the a priori is fair use while heeding the demands of marginalized groups. 321. Appropriation combats underclaiming violence while eroding sovereignty. Copper laws protection serves as a gatekeeping mechanism for appropriations from considering appropriation. Decolonized fair use doctrine serves cultural production in all of natures, by warranting interpretation of fair use factor. Test decolonized second fair use factor. When assess the work function, value, and are the marginalized groups who contemplate copyright infringement claims. Fair use undoubtedly plays a key role to assess. IP can be repurposed. Farm material for it is people rights to ownership of specific properties. True that IP is based on Western concentration and ownership, but those laws are the primary vehicle for protection of works to separate in this interest from this regime. In all legalization, modification is denied, proper legal shield and sword.
You good for cross?
Yeah.
First question, what is an indigenous group?
So the app doesn't define like what an indigenous group is, but they're descendants from like native culture.
So how do you determine what a native word is?
The app doesn't have to define what a native word is. It only applies a second factor and redefines it based on its impact on the cultural environment.
So can like racist Nazis just pull up with cultural work?
No, you can't pull up with cultural work because it's in the context of fair use, which is the second part of copyright.
Okay, what's the distinction?
So so those people can still like file for copyright. They might get rejected by the courts, but this is about fair use. So whenever someone infringes on a product under the guise of it being good for like education.
So under the plan, when is infringement allowed and when is it not allowed?
Infringement is not allowed whenever it violates fair use.
Yeah, so
if the courts deem that the second factor makes it actual infringement and not fair use.
okay, sure. I want to talk about your Farley 97 card.
Sure.
What indigenous groups want demand the land?
Sorry?
Which indigenous groups want and demand the land?
Many indigenous groups own copyright in the status quo. I'm certain there are multiple that the Farley evidence does not state, but specifically Reed is talking about the Hopi and Apache tribe, and I think Farley is talking about Navajo Nation.
Okay, sure. Next question concerns a lot of your read cards describe things like theft of land, genocide, those things. How does giving indigenous rights the right to copyright resolve any of those harms?
Well, copyright can be over materials that impact those things, but like we obviously haven't made a claim to reverse causally solve for all appropriation and all genocide.
Yeah, sure, but like your cards have said that other things facilitating genocide, like
but they still say the main thing is the lack of intellectual property
you think
protection.
that the lack of cultural protection is the main reason behind like theft?
Like that's what our cards
genocide?
isolate. Yeah.
Okay,
What do you mean like behind theft? Yeah,
Like
because
your-
theft applies to IP. So yeah,
Like theft of land.
theft of land. Like explain.
Next card, the Fernandez card. What do you think is the interlink between debating over fiatic proposals and learning about the grim micro details of politics?
Yeah, the starting point for learning about politics and understanding like how to advocate for things is the process of research and the process of imagining a future where
Yeah,
that
but
happens.
in a world of fiat, what's the internal link between debating over fiat proposals where you skip over the hardest steps of implementing policy and learning how to engage in those things in the real world?
I disagree, because you can't prescribe like a universal claim to how everyone approaches policymaking or engages in the nitty-gritty fine details of like advocacy. Our argument is that fiat is still a valuable tool. It encourages us to do like competitive research, and it is also the first step to creating a plan. The understanding of the endpoint of a plan and debating about its consequences is the first step before we can actually like call your policymaker,
Okay.
go to Congress.
Last
whatever.
question. What is the internal link between reading the 1EC and materially improving the conditions of indigenous life?
Well, we think the 1EC advocates for the improvement of indigenous people. We
That
think
doesn't
that's a good idea.
You want me to move this?
Yeah,
I think we have one too.
Oh, you also have
Yeah, we have two. I think.
Oh, give them.
No. You guys hold on to it. They have one as well.
Oh, okay.
I'll just put it on here.
Put it on your table next to your computer.
Before I send the 1NC, I didn't prep a speech like Autumn, so it's not going to be nearly as good as this. But I'd like to thank some people as well. I want to thank my parents for supporting me, taking me to tournaments. My dad drove me to TOC, just making all of this possible, being super supportive in general. I want to thank all the coaches at Northview, Ike, Sahil, Ayush Pranay. None of this would have been possible without you guys. But last but not least, in Kaner, like literally none of this is possible without you. You've been here the whole time. You just, I don't know, I'm doing this off the top of my head. So. Yeah. All the friends in the activity I made, there's tons, so if I don't say your name, Nate, Jackson, Robbie, Lucy, Michael, Samir, Essen, Andreas, tons more. I didn't have time to write a speech, but thank all y'all for making the activity super fun, making me want to stay. My past partners are Ian from last year, Sajad now this year, Kevin at camp, and then of course Jerry for being an insane partner this year. It's been super fun, and I wouldn't have joined the debate without Jerry, so thanks for getting me into it. I think that's it. It's 6 Nicholas.
Case in what order?
6 Nicholas.
No case.
Nicholas.
Oh, okay.
Good.
No,
Yeah.
give me a second. Okay.
The general economy is the background condition for sociality. Heterology is beyond hyperengine, fresh, the restricted economies, paradigms, and dispassionate reasons for thesis. Solar access, mentions 19, human consciousness, limits, element, the false sense of limits, truly exists, access, solar economy, our kind of condition, for all political pleasure, plus, energy of the sun, essential planning system, performance, the organized system, to expand the access to the sun, condition, the producer, surplus, rituals, human sacrifice, and form expedition, paradigms, the ability to reach a degree, presume power to measure, and solar economies, the limits, system defined by access. The 1EC exemplifies the restricted economy, a monolithic statehood that imprints terms of the political to legal settlement, requiring sacrificial corpsing in the formulas. Carter 19, American structure to horrific regulative experience on corporal limits to itself, status, sacred status, sacred predicated reservation, the black radical sacred positioning of the status, the political repeats, genesis, concept of the by projecting a fixed point into the forms counter, and the forms of order, what is not political, in terms of imposition of the order, not political, and intensity, figure, racial, strong space to establish by actors, gospel, organized by giving enormous time of political economy, conscious choice for existence in the face of not being by the feet of ritual repetition, rebels that is political theology proceeds under attainment of the sacred God, stated in the manner God terms the name, conquer the vessel, malpractice, experience of the sacred detachment, stabilization of the state, exists in the image of God, homo politicus, economically, Homo politicus economicus ceremoniously repeats the theology that establishes an anti-black attainment of the Bissell Carter 21 ritually repeat the anti-coherence of the chaotic and unregulated energy that operates to the geopolitical order of the black lineage transfers into the body of the sovereign of space, the body culture, the clinic violence, work ceremonies, to muster, man savage of the become young, and their service they like to ontological theological order that organized matter, service to the economy at the value of the basic bonds, blackness, performance, unattainable outside of this extra ceremony, opposition to the ceremony, grace, vote nay for black malpractice and mysticism, that refuses anti-black mystical God as the managerial class of governance in favor of sacred access. Carter 19, malpractice, rupture the property line and grab to the reshop from the developing the flesh of the world, towards infinite parasitic possibilities, experiences, negative absence, state of finding up and feel qualities of the black eye, that myth, the political adventure, black status, question, secret, informative, vis-a-vis, impossible, black life, radical, black radicals, the most fugitive, there's wonder, other world, access, black photos, is the inverse of resisting interpretation in favor of something unstable, that all, a political interplay, exhaustion, release of female, legible within political identity, cannot be clear about the miniature of planet unknowable to practice, belonging, malpractice, belonging to another world, the most uncanon, by virtue, lack of purpose, and malpractice, and about explanation, as performance so shitty, of DBT, inanimate, anti-American politics, critique, political dodging, God is governed, even if the right next up. Indigeneity's ontological status is one of ultimate clearance from time and space, with the truth balance and commodified as a blank slate. For colonial initiatives to be dreamed, reform is impossible. There can never be a future in which indigeneity is not defined by gender, side, or discrimination. Morals, 15 ontological modalities clearing the defined ages of life, and focus on financial sovereignty, discover we're all violence and clearing as an out at the moment, discover ontological to for the moment, settle basis, have to rich, bargains, opportunity, and never claim to never had to claim to know ontological straight, exodus, concept, either level the spatial time, whatever clearance, equally pivotal level, the individual trueness of balance, committed against body stuff, express over across time and space, pretending valid the victims and work to wipe out bodies can any such explain the spots ontological clearance, allegiance, cartography, messages, only if they're understanding that there were no subjects for displaced the ending for life, given temporal assets, given any these set to have a future, given that the life past or present, any life capacity to the futures, there could never be a future way directions and not found clear and defined, being defined through the clearing that will never be or form would fail to make taking account of the civilization and possibility of habits would regress civilization, governments over the duration is deception, the point of social debt, and others maintain this empty of meaning for the European native vendors and audible blanks used to reflect back to colonists although with intricate life fiction point, being unable to claim this indigenous proclamation understood about the spread that Indians even exist, pushes out so old that there's no way anyone can claim mining service, spiritual connection to the Indian intimacy of the man, instruction, all these physical life, but also structure to generation, culture, rocks. It is all social life, removes its time and space, and should give appearance to the substance, to the cellular creates civil society outside empty space. Greenhill's indigenous cooperates paternalistic fuel good politics and entrenched indigeneity is other terms case because modern indigenous artists excluded Ramachi and Onat, traditional cultural expression from indigenous cultural identity forms this approach and their conscious of artistic expression that any production creates artistic tradition boards and safe press even to be indigenous modern arts, critical engagement with the colonial class, indigenous movement could be banned from its culture practices, production of culture expression purpose, stereotypic commodification, knowledge, arts that fits indigenous the most simplified civilization applied to other cultures that do not understand but is represented knowledge, cultural distraction, creation, creative moments, surplus, artificial settings, or production can present itself and making a mentor in just colonial class forgetting that this tradition has been sure about West is really to fulfill the ethical mission to predict indigenous culture, control the absolute prediction of culture expression, the shared features of colonial time justification based on alternate applicants within the ethical rightness of the mission protection, be diminished by leaders and indigenous committees against actual interest of the individual members, although they may have been well-meaning extension to the subject of this right to confer copyright benefits to the supposed to be indigenous, although an individual member may suffer determines whether some of this indigenous entitled to create traditional or dispute by racist legislation, creating episodes of crises of continuous settler civilization, reiterates white futurity unconstrained by attitude and inherency cause repetition compulsion, while also locking a native genocide. Now, 22 states can short time invested in years of their inevitable people must accept all powers to rest, being such a nonsense, care, tools, fiction, to propaganda, standard, as to the grave, absence of refuse, limitations of form, construction, and retreat to the best redemption, absence of metalware, rather than material and European obstacles, ongoing troubles of imperial time, scaffolding, terrible, alternate future bodies, having to white system, to reiterate, say, long care, possible, and catch the line, to proceed, not more fidelity, no, but being bold, but in being emboldened. Settlement must be theorized maximally contingency, self-versus, of responsibility, repressed nature, genocide, Corey 15, the several unconscious race, hatred, foolish, sort of unintegrated narratives, which settlement becomes the only story relating the accounts, history, sense, accountability, between matters, bonus, space, figures, like, as the likeness, anxiety of absence, generate the imagination, space, nature, and listeners, and economic feature, construction, the subject, found, and the reason all colonial objects, like colonists, acknowledge and blame, when it serves the purpose needed, that aligns his nation, subjects, remove the indigenous portion of profit, contribution, relation, diverted our attention from the action of the rest of the denial of trauma through repression, sustained or ongoing violence, settlement must be repressed, to lie the horror of genocide, soldiers to live within a cycle, subject, parent rights, of that, of addiction, settlement close to the settlers to deny our relation with the indigenous parents, take a part of the denial, actually, of our interest, new imagination, need to be once more new and conscious, capable of more than depression. Vote neg for generative pessimism, Belcourt 16 bodies included by time pressure to world, they can't better score, very consolidation, build the potential status, selling rejection, not make free being political, social love, in that case, the option to overcome depression, mercy, realization, political responsibility, work things, will continue present, requires all industries of life, too short, options, disagreement, face of multiple countries, reconciliation, face of political power, becomes radical, death, part of personal origin, according to depression, dreaming, alternatives, sustaining, touch with life, to life, gender, world, physical propels, keeps running, living in a world exhausted body, expression, it has, filling cane pass, even if the right next off. The plain violates the veil of ignorance says, Koshkin et al. 14, the VOI inscription one working on the position one as a fair distribution one is for occupation about withdrawing our things for the public domain, shaking private domain, for the individuals use the ID for the after extended public domain. Some parts have been able to freely exploit IDs for each generation, yet limited rights of future gender, but living in the public domain are we living free and weaker. Parties cannot be fair, appears for all religion, supporting different legislation and material effect. Artifacts is not fair. Prefer religion ethics, utils ethically bankrupt. Stark et al. 14, the religion approach built on VOI motions and love to get the worst of individual utilities, some utilities Ross. expensive basic points more and you tell because you don't ever could like until you tell the party A part can I discuss if individual such by BYD choose the least undesirable outcome, even if they're right next off. The demand to preserve stability operates in direct opposition to the laws of the universe and feeds into the cycle of repetition compulsion. Layer 22, repetition compulsion last man experience trace more body lost or super short or later state wants to do everything turns to shape, keep that ultimate expanded in the system without flying universal dust air, fortune, extinction ability and opportunities for earth opportunity to thermal equilibrium change the preventive psyche from achieving rest and anti-entropy approach with the trauma to the psyche master the experience of this exacerbation squad re-traumatizing the psychology field the trauma repeated self repetition trauma repetition is fundamentally the repetition of speech even if the right next off. Intellectual property grants a right to privatization by control over intelligence and contradicting description. Mercy attempts to consume what they would be better off consequently. Verse 13, what is private experience? Although the change normative private things were corrupted by being called public things and not been sex question for their participation in the Lord, intellectual and non-corporate sense of located in space, intellectual became intellect is the fundamental intellectual beyond to public things can obviously have a question knowledge and incapable of sequestration is modest public to attempt to sequestration and retreat it treat it as sensible attempt to act as the word can act as if you knowledge and enter those intelligible is attempt to make what the other off confidence or overlap between each other. I'm happy to sir. Copy this is right to question unintelligible to attempt privatization of something that cannot be controlled. The impact is a spontaneous death followed by an eternity of suffering. It's ethical imperative to embrace his teachings. Alternative is a theological rejection. There are 17 people go to church to receive his teachings. After this moment, after they fail to make use of them, their house can be confounded by God, inflicting punishment. People die if care was not taken into account. Perpetually be suffering for life. God made man to have dominion over animals and plants and men. Have power over own God. The astral projection. The sinners heavenly kingdom kicked against him.
Okay, so I want to start with the veil of ignorance test. I would say that narrowing the public domain is good or bad.
It says the plan is about it.
Can you answer my question?
It says IP is fundamentally.
Well, is narrowing the public domain good or bad?
It violates the IP fundamentally violates the veil of ignorance
I
test.
know, but
It's
your card's about the public domain, so I'm just asking, is narrowing it good or bad?
Like you're gonna say IP already exists. We can factor in
No,
the
that's actually not at all what I was going to say. Like, I'm just asking you a simple yes/no question. Is narrowing the public domain good or bad? Like, your card only highlights the public domain like 10 times. You should know.
Jared?
On this question?
Okay, is narrowing the public domain good or bad?
It's bad.
Okay, how does the app link?
What do you mean? Like
Why does the app?
We've negated the value of projecting IP. The app can contest that and say it's good. Like it's up for debate.
Okay, I disagree with the app interpretation of that. Okay, the critiques or any of the alternatives to the audit,
No.
can you kick any of them?
Kick the olds or kick the
We'll
kicks?
unconditionally advocate for rejecting the ones.
Okay, but you can like conditionally kick the alts, right?
Conditionally kick the ones.
Yeah.
Like we don't have to go for the old, but that's not kicking.
Okay. Why is that not kicking?
Well, because we've unconditionally rejected the one AC and all the olds are like functional
Okay,
rejection
sure.
of the one AC.
What is the generative pessimism that the second critique?
Yeah, so the Belcourt card says, instead of focusing on things that we have zero agency over, we have to focus on things that we as debaters have agency over, which is generative pessimism. Instead of focusing on governmental redress or hypothetical fiated scenarios where the government gives indigenous people IP that will never happen in the real world due to inherency, things like that, we have to focus on what we as debaters have agency over.
So it's like just a critique of fiat.
It's a critique of distance scenario planning,
Any of this is ontology.
because it drains energy.
What?
Can you answer if any of this is ontology?
Is any of this ontology?
Yeah,
Okay, which ones? Which ones?
the second thing.
Okay. Again, veil of ignorance, when do we say so?
Well, it's also an index consequences.
Where?
Like, it says that we shouldn't justify things for the consequences, rather if it violates the veil of ignorance, you should reject it.
Okay, and what is that?
The veil of ignorance, the first card says that the veil of ignorance, second card says it's just like deontology.
Yeah.
It's like Raleighian deontology.
Yeah. Dude, what? Like, explain.
No, I don't know. Jared.
Okay, you don't know. Jared, do you know? Okay. Okay. So can we just scratch this then?
No, it's
Okay.
still.
Alright. Okay, what is black malpractice?
Like, what is the whole?
Yeah.
It refuses the one he sees anti-black stereotype.
Okay, so they're both like reduced stereotyping.
Like, there are other links that are related for the black malpractice,
Like
but
what?
are not necessarily
Like
similar.
what?
There's like a critique of death reps and suffering
Death?
reps.
Death reps. When do we say that?
Like suffering reps, not
Suffering
death
reps,
reps.
okay.
Suffering, not death.
Okay. guys. I've sort of thought of this moment for a really long time because so many people have allowed me to be here. First, my parents who endure my constant absences and support me on every turn, and also my coaches. I will be the first to acknowledge that Greenhill Debate has such a huge support system through our coaches, so I want to show them some appreciation. First, Mr. Fitzpatrick. I'm really glad you were our coach this year. You've been so supportive and understanding, and a great person to talk to. Second, Mr. Timmons. You have provided valuable perspectives and experience that has made debate so much more enriching. Third, Mr. Parabo. Please stop sniping me on the Greenhill Debate Instagram. More importantly, thanks to all the laughs and bad driving situations. Now, I want to thank our assistant coaches that have helped us so much at this tournament. LJ, Justin, Temi Tope, John, Asia, Liz, and some of our coaches from previous years, Madison, Jimin, Jiyun, and Anish. Judges and the panel for being here and giving me feedback throughout the 4 years I've been debating. Our opponents for working so hard all season. This is our first and last debate this year. The gender minorities in debate who have always made me feel welcome here, and anyone else who has ever in any way or sent me encouragement or made me laugh. Lastly, I want to thank my friends inside and out of debate who have always reminded me that I can be here. Neha, Ella, Dia, Sarah, Isabel, Lily, Maya, Aaron, Dylan, Varun, Janaki, Seda, Aditi, Sherry, Ilyan, Yijin, Aitan, Swam, Hassan, Akash, and of course Harris. And a special shout out to the Big Blue Secret Bash. You were my best friends, and I love you all so, so, so much. I also definitely cannot forget about Gautam. He is genuinely one of the most dedicated people I know at debate, while also being one of the most unintentionally funny people I know. I've learned so much from you in so many ways, and I'm so, so, so proud of you. I can't wait to see you kill it in college. And of course, Dr. Chase, who believed in me in the first place and told me to not take myself too seriously. She was my rock throughout high school, and I can't even express how much you've impacted me in the debate space. I hope we make you proud. So right now I'm going to answer all the shit the 1 and C said. The order is appropriation, the black malpractice K, the Seckle K, the theism K, the Rawls procedural, psychoanalysis, that's the theism K. Is anyone up? Cultural appropriation is culturally and socially violent, resulting in the dispossession of Native people that kills agency and sovereignty. Only in secondary, the second factor through legal rights, sheets, or demands. They've dropped the case. You presume it at 100. Black malpractice case. Framework. Only evaluate the plan's desirability that entails weighing the case and having links to the plan's periodic implications. Preferred. Unpredictable critiques estimate fairness and clash. Permutation to both. Either the adults can overcome the links or can't solve. But if they have fiat, that's a vote or private actor. International fiat destroys debate. There is billions of possible actors. Justifies object fiat and obliterates both fairness and clash. The app naturalizes violence. The theory of the general economy is wrong and destroys political agency. Land of 15 betides economic conception while protecting of Semitic capitalism to radical critique. Ends up protecting capitalist irrationality, wastefulness, crisis, and danger, attention diverted from society, natural insurmountable causes which humanity hardly expects to control the result. This pessimistic debilitating counsel goes human agencies when human culpability or downplay placed on our time scale of historical humanity, ancient civilization, which takes a very example. Extravagant consumption happened merely seconds ago. This is not a cosmo. Natural good, but a production of humanity advancing through history and answers struggle with nature. Our restricted economy is wrong, and their theory dooms the all to fail. failure. Land at 15, absolute negation tends to move in a circular pattern, enter negating is operative. This leads to affirmation present institution such institution. Begun incidental form without them for belief. This is not social injunctions provide the very foundation for social sovereignty. Your rights between supposed to all ordinary society such appears solution negations of one that can cut both ways in the cause of social repression of society. Well, institution neither conceivable nor desirable. The point is rather to abolish bad institution, change and reform available and finite. Theories can prove surfaceable capital if the fight is against institution. There's something to be said for neoliberals on which deconstructed so many institutions under such a light the neoliberal state emergence as a postmodern state wriggled an active self-deconstructing but ties contradictory policy, thus overtly embraces radicalism but remains paradoxically affirmative to the present political constellation. The alternative also chooses DDF, which means invest in the public domain. It causes increased violence, churn, retooling the language of copyright, disrupts anti-black notions of intellectual property, open space for critical collaborative inquiry. Wilson also for challenging white institute intellectual property for insertion down, disrupting whiteness with leadership initiated the process contracted by the standard property language inspired the white and imaginary whose knowledge of property that can be purchased and result provides a revised language as accepted and concluded to honor the research teams to own their collective data community research generate from the design and later this kind of north policy infrastructure designed to profit rather than advancing just innovation that shall align with the liberatory anti-racist principle of critical collaborative inquiry. That continues, the alternative continues a racialized legacy of oppression and exclusion that should be rejected, especially in the context of Trump now. Roads below 20 the context matters and fairies copyright with African American creators to reject respect and retrieve creative expression. The artist's great copyright influence the way African Americans make use of making them from copyright. Enlightening by alienating them from copyright system considered the issue of oppression would be a step towards remedy. Do not abandon the liberatory potential of time and political transformation. Coloniality is imposed, not given, and we should refashion politics by politicizing it in service of a future in making. It is possible to reject hope in the inevitability of progress while still fighting for political gains with real material consequences. The permutation of self-best and concert and most between time is instrumental in about specific topic developing a measured opinion time. The all the universal contingent particular context and social powers into divergent experience of hope. If someone's experience of time is a question of time is a passive problem of hope, speaks of the way futures are conceived to evaluate how we approach future, understand that body thinks in advance connecting passing the future possibility to future and making a conscious understanding futures of behavior or connected deconceptually unpredictable by hearing future make it elevates ethical question that we need to arbitrate between competing plans and analyzing the future allows us to greatly assess possibility by focusing on understanding and other urban knowledge of the way the agents agree with the past and the present and responsibility towards institutions that shape it the whole conscious forward-looking active decision for the belief that inevitably progress and grounding itself in the contingency temporarily advances non-static understanding democracy which actions open to possibility looking hope and social relations without to argue that people never one can lose hope in institute representative democracy capacity of just the climate change will still have to be your significant measures reduce carbon emissions hope does not mean changing people's reordering how they relate to politics and media that condition rather the control experience of hope by enabling social relations. Cycle. Cross-apply framework permutation to both. Are the yields can overcome the links or can solve alt failed results to the public domain that creates reject ontology. Like 20 colonialism is a very move limits indigenous agency individual organization the human rights framework against these tools will level that have proven track record actors are liberally short rights framework custom to overlook indigenous agency authors versus cooperative desire to colonize and be engaged with the state of future dangerous indigenous poverty strips and inhabitants engagement for close operating agency does remarkable to serve indigenous resistant contempt system with the safe for close and improved relation pessimism self-defeating for community to culture. It's groundbreaking affirmative towards indigenous organization where both attacking the declaration transitional organization UTD IPC these are not going to implement changes of their own negotiation process require engagement to retravel change requires to be careful diplomacy now accusations or efforts to cooperative creates unnecessary negative feelings division. The Raman and Karn first, no link. We don't assume indigenous people want copyright or protect the copyrights of those who do. Read. It's also indigenous citing multiple indigenous tribes like Apache and Hopi. Second, wrong. The entire one sees a reason why protection from appropriation is good. Ramadan assumes status quo copyright scene. Or third, assumes justification is based on indigenous people's authorization, which is obviously not true. No repetition compulsion. First, it's no link. Policy teams are disappointed at the end of every 2 are non-falsifiable. Second, repetition good. Debates process of argument and iteration over the course of the season allowed debaters to determine if their advocacy is desirable and something to advocate for when they leave debate. This is non-unique. Read 20. IP silence regarding indigenous people colonizing maintain their own IP system prior to settlement where Europeans did not view sovereignty exclusive or binding federal laws not apply nor to try to access to federal courts tribal islands to years to resolve ambiguity arise not from the failure to bring timely action but from the large use of making courts remedies available tribes research access to vindicate their rights. Legal recognition is good but 13 how do we survive recognition linked with how do we survive without a struggle then to gain voice cannot be done requiring collective where we see the authority grounding of the law with a new move necessity critical relations to law now put forward the recognition that addresses the state apparatus a model way with its depends on our ability to function as subject instrumental state power without being subjugated by the state is not just a model that would feel like convecting chance and put its opportunity to apply the law against its own to make it say all forms of recognition on freedom we struggle and law and politics the politics not just take all claims of recognition are positive the terms of cohesion towards why some forms of life more possible than others the difference between recognition to overcome repression recognition as we change subordinate has to work to make subordinate to politics so ways to deploy recognition without allotting institute prelude these are the norms of recognized because they've been constant cover embedding new forms of political subjectivity transfer competition through the political is after the urgent side of the left for label politics which consider how the salmon recognition the theism case permutation to both contemplate doesn't do anything the alt politics are permutation to both the old politics of refusal to invest in deference epistemology that further marginalizes people who were never here to begin in the first place. Typo 20 calls for deference as a default political orientation counter the marginalized groups into in the lead spaces some rooms outside influence who affects institutional access as social individuals like to be in the room because they are systematic for the people they represent never serve elite capture challenge unjust or political allegiance some students of Highland to PhD others to prison the campaigns direct attention for whether socialists and perhaps like if you win it for the one will trickle down will work as within our conference probably not cross the black framework the link misses about not all IP it's inintelligible it protects expressions applications or embodiments of ideas copyright also incentivizes writing music art etc which means that they generalize the money say turn God hates everything but the plan they deny all forms of creative ownership or formally denies human participation in divine creativity if you think this is ridiculous and you should think the K is absolutely ridiculous because they literally do not know what they're talking about they're all as usual We mean they don't understand Rawls' argument at all. It's about principles of justice like fair liberty. Even the mandate a mandate of the plan doesn't meet the app results in more rights and opportunities for indigenous groups. No link. We didn't say util framework only value the plan's desirability cross apply. From above, non-rest theory is bad. It's unpredictable. Cause of substance condos also value time and strategy skill of the block. Gives the negative and advantage not reciprocal. They think our means, but we can't have multiple plans and modes. Argumented irresponsibility. This so solves their offense. It also doesn't make sense. We presume a veil of ignorance because we allow everyone to have the same rights in the first place. They do assume that indigenous people have a disadvantage in the first place. Also, consequentialism is the only objective basis for ethics. Senna and Armstrong's poetry. What people get with the reception that we ought to make the world better. The question is whether any moral question can be added to the basic consequentialist factor. If no objection reveals any need for anything beyond causes, then consequences determine what is morally right or wrong. A fixation of the motive and intent makes zero sense for state action. Only util. Actually, no, don't read that. Psychoanalysis. Violence is a social construct, not a result of psychological drives. Also, cross the life framework, permutation both. Hughes 15, race is not an integral part of the human psyche. It is social content, and you have to comprehend racism prior to destructive be eligible, or the collective unconscious due to failure, finding out that's a delusion, a permanent feature of the mind's habit, or part of imposition, there are individual confuses habit with the instinct, racial capacity itself. At a psychological level, it's not individual, it's social, and it also do not do the alt. Even if psychology is true, it is not specific into the case of the alt, because we are winning the institutional engagement is good. Contemporary psychoanalysis is theoretically bankrupt. It lacks rigor. Objective truths do exist, and deny that James the alt to failure. Mills and psychoanalysis like this self-contained, and it's a negative postmodern turn that without having to drop the stringent criteria of empirical science, assertions are being made under the guise of scholarship. Experience of linguists and what becomes an unconscious mental process of how to comfort the experimental word of everything pointless and like we cannot make legitimate assertion about truth because these things are merely constructed, therefore physics, mathematics, formal logic, merely social invention too. We don't have capacity to form a general appraisal, there are no effect that would anyone care to defy the laws of gravity by attempting to fly off the roof by flipping the arm psychoanalysis has no tenable meta theory, postmodern sensibility, collapse into relevance because no independent standards, methods, or principles subject to procedure for evaluating the scheme of postmodern person lead to relevance and relative collapse into contradict and idleness, psychoanalysis, really has nothing to offer. Come on. We meet the categorical imperative. We believe that racism itself is an axiomatic vibe, but resolving a prior conflict is impossible because they require credible moral judgment. Currently, 18, but no transcendental right is required to explain how the close link between delivered jurors' relief and evidence what are epistemic advantage relate to the jury. The evidence is delivered juror and first revelation evidence is of truth preserved is likely to be the object of a gentle relation of the subject. I believe the empiricism posits one reason for intending delivers the output one intent. Mark the card intents. B specificity. Government's action must use consequentialism. First, aggregation. Governments have to aggregate so all collective action incurs trade-off. Second, no act/omission distinction for government's policies create permissions and prohibitions. So authorizing action cannot be an omission to the state as to help regulate the public domain. It also results in bad theory practice because you can have good intent but also result in things like appropriation, which we create. Do you want me to say it? Reject evidence that said Kant he was like a fucking racist. Bullshit. And I have 14. Kant writing about in the legends way of colonial practice. Kant you can't alone rule as an ambiguous violation of rights.
Start on the central thing. You said repetition portion is good because it teaches debaters and then they advocate for things outside of debate. Why do debaters advocate for things that they learn in debate?
What? Oh, that's not our argument. Our argument is that repetition is good because argumentative iteration over a course of the season allows like debaters to refine their arguments, and those are valuable skills.
Yeah, it says allows debaters to determine that their advocacy is desirable and then advocate for it once they leave debate. What is it? What is the motivation?
I mean, they could
advocate
advocate for these things outside of debate. We are not trying to psychoanalyze every single person in this room, but
what is the motivation for debaters to advocate for these things outside of the debate?
it is very individualized, and I don't think I can make a prescriptive claim about
So
that.
there are motivations outside of competition. Sure.
No, we think competition actualizes those benefits.
Okay, so what's the motivation of that competition?
Well, competition brings us into a space with equal stasis, which allows us to have a equal starting point for research and encourages in-depth preparation
clear,
in class,
like,
which would
people have
increase the
different
ability for
reasons.
us to advocate for things outside of debate. It's the skills that we get from there that are valuable, not necessarily what we
I
advocate.
want to talk about the contra side. This last card that you read that says Kant is racist, you should reject it. Why?
Do you not think we should reject racist people? You
No,
read Kant, which
hold
says
on,
that you should reject axiomatic bad things.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing that we should reject Kant. I'm asking what the warrants.
Well,
Okay, no, not the warrant for like Kant bad, but like why is rejecting racist things in debate good?
because we think they're bad.
Like
what?
why?
Because they have bad consequences. They invest in bad practices.
Okay, sure. So rejecting racist things is good regardless of ballot sovereignty.
What?
Okay, sure. This will be on. Reasons to reject. Honda,
Honda?
the stuff on okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Under your affirmative interpretation, only evaluate plain desirability. What does the judge do if in-round violence occurs, but it's not a link to the plan? For example, if the one
Well, I think that's really different.
For example,
difficult to adjudicate. The fact that you were trying to bring this up in the first place kind of sounds like you want it to happen.
Wait, hold on. Actually, I have a counterexample. What if the 1AC was Kant? You said Kant is racist, rejected. Under your affirmative intern, will we get links to the Kant being racist?
I think you can make those arguments, but that can also be like supplemented by the fact that
No, like under your model of debate, if the 1AC reads a Kant card, can we say reject the team for reading Kant? Under your affirmative interpretation.
You'd have to win that, like it's a link to the plan. I think.
It has to be a link to the plan.
Well, it would be a link to the
How
plan.
how is this fair or like reciprocal at all? If you get to say reject the 1AC for reading Kant or racist, but we can't say that to the 1AC.
Well, you can say things like Kant is not racist. No link to these arguments.
Okay, sure.
Hey, before you start your prep, given the heat in this room, we're going to transition to cold stream 4. And so I'm not going to talk about it, and everyone is kind of approved. But if we want the debaters in the panel go over when we start your prep and
If we're doing that, can I just write a question real quick?
sounds great. But there's going to be a little bit of a delay, so we get transition. Yeah, audience, please stay here for everyone else. And then you all should come You're not the Northview Bears. Well, just don't
Can somebody else get the chords? Get the what?
Is that your target?
I don't know. I should have changed when I had the chance, and now I'm stuck with it.
I don't know who's these belong.
Yao Yao Chen's?
Okay. Hey, hey Bilal. Bilal, could you reset up Yao Yao's setup? Thank you.
Which one?
The one with the. This has an MBA on it, so I assume.
Okay.
I assume that's Yao Yao's. We want to take MBAs too. Thank you.
Okay.
Alright, okay. Is this your power extension or ours?
What's up, chat? Thanks for watching. We'll be back in a second.
That was you're such a cool.
I know, man.
Can you unplug the white thing?
Dude, we gotta cut that out for the live stream.
Why
That's so cringe.
why are both of us recording?
Huh?
Why are both of us recording?
It's a backup.
This is the backup.
Why did I just go? Man, that's gonna be on the TOC stream forever.
Yeah, I know. You gotta think before
I gotta
you
edit that out.
You gotta think before you act.
Yeah.
What room is it?
Cold Stream 4.
Thank you. Saho, can you open the room door for me? Oh, okay. Yeah, I better not edit this out. Wait, are you in it? Oh yeah, you are. You are. Okay. We're gonna set this up. Do you wanna wave to the camera? Do you wanna say hi? Do you wanna say hi? It's the live. Everyone comes to.
Who is that? Yeah, or MBA?
It's yes. This is the backup. No, NBA is live, but they paused it.
Yeah, so as long as Burp is on, y'all stay.
I'll take that.
charger.
Do you want it to be like on
Is this
power?
fine? This angle?
That's a yeah question. I'll take let me take a look.
Okay, I'll adjust it.
The other two judges not coming back? Yeah, I was gonna wait until they came back.
Just take
10 minutes. 10 minutes right now.
Yeah, I don't have a plug for this one. Oh, okay. There you go. Smart. Just several of the slots don't want to cooperate.
Yeah, slide them over.
Oh, okay. Well, that's beyond my PhD sophistication. Thank you so much.
Yeah. $7.50. Okay, before I send the doc, I want to do some thank yous. I guess we'll wait for Jake to come back.
You have to think, Jake.
Okay, I too did not prep out a script for this speech, so I'll be going off the dome. But first and foremost, I'd like to thank our coach, Matt Sakaner. He's worked effortlessly for the past 4 years, maybe even longer, for me, my teammates, and everyone else. He sacrifices his weekends, his free time with all of his friends, and does so much for us. I couldn't ask for more, and I can't think of anyone who deserves this moment more than him. I'd like to thank my parents for supporting me emotionally, financially, like in every way through this journey. I'd like to thank both of my sisters, Eileen and Kaylin. I wouldn't have done debate without my sister Eileen. She did public forum, but yeah, that's the main reason I started doing debate. And my little sister Kaylin, who's now a freshman and is starting her debate journey herself. I'd like to thank the University of Kentucky staff for having such a nice tournament every single year. I'd like to thank all my mentors and coaches over the years. I'd like to thank Ayush Pandar, my previous partner, taught me basically everything I know. I'd like to thank Pranay Bagunta. He was a big mentor when I was a freshman. I'd like to thank Juliette Salah, another mentor, Julia Pearson. I'd also like to thank other coaches that we recently gained, especially Ike Song. He's been instrumental to our success this year. Basically every single Newtonic thing you see on the wiki is like his idea, and I think he's the best researcher in the entire country. He's insane. I'd also like to thank Sahil Jain for helping us at this tournament, and Asan Tara Kelly for like being there in our pre-rounds and like having good vibes. I'd like to thank all of the other Northview debaters, Alan, Raj, Kevin, Edwin, Sajad, and all of our other novices that like there's too many to name. It's really inspiring seeing everyone like at practice working their hardest, and I hope that this is inspiring for them. I'd like to thank all of my lab leaders, BBE, BEJJP, BFHPRS, who all like were instrumental to my success as a debater. I'd like to thank all of my friends, basically everyone Adam said, like Prep Monkey, AQ, everything. Yeah. I'd like to thank my opponents, Adam and Rory. Like Rory said, we debated round 1 of Greenhill, so the first round of the season, and now we're debating in TOC finals, the last round of the season. So that's pretty cool. I'd like to thank Sam Mueling, and I'd like to thank Kento Taylor, my partner, who I think was also very important for our success this year. He is super good at research. Every time I like have an assignment I don't want to do, or there's some like hard card that I know I can't find, I always give the assignment to him, he always finds it. And I couldn't think of anyone else I'd rather have as a partner. And I also like to thank Aryan Bhattacharya and Brian Fu. Okay, with that, the truancy is sent. The order is just the sec all.
Oh, along at the top.
Yeah, and framework is in the 1R, like you need like 3 pages.
Alright, wait, so
Yeah, there's like a brief overview, it's not that long.
I got you. It's just the Pernaya
Jerry, Viraj said, where's this thing?
Oh, I'd like to thank Viraj Name as well.
Is it live?
Yeah.
So I want to add Rajveer and Alan. I forgot about you. Also Julia Pearson.
Okay, oh, no, the order is a second K, the roll is D, and then the con D. Not just the K. Viraj, I'm sorry.
You said.
Yes.
You said that 7 clones became
The rolls, DA,
and
the con D.
the comp.
I haven't got it yet. Oh, I'm down there.
Okay, Greenhill's good. Panel's good. Okay. Greenhill has dropped ontology. Both parts of Tweety say that she actually could be good, but doesn't disprove it. No new answers. Block charge premise off their mistakes. I said that now. Sacralism is an ontology non-event. One is gratuitous violence. Genocide is distinct from grammars of explanation. There's no counter-explanation. For 98% of cultures and languages, a race or gratuitous violence beyond utility like scalping or the Trail of Tears. Two is semiotics. Indigeneity is only marked by what it is not. Colonized for this colonized civilization and non-human opposition to which roster of all political sovereignty. That's proven by how they were renamed to Indians or Native Americans, where their heritage is neither from Indian nor related to Vespucci. 2, 3 is pacification. Even if progress is possible, they don't reach to elevate framing to an ontological level to prevent cellular pacification by saying colonialism wasn't so bad, which is first time responsibility. They obviate the difference between singular events and intergenerational harm. 2 is 2 permutation to both fields. 1 is starting point. Fair moods the plan. 2 is incoherent. Go rejects the after is severance. 7 justifications. We've critiqued its ability for grounded argument of responsibility. 4th is offense, defense. They also is better alone. There's only risk inclusion of the links co-opted. Now 2 is 3 public domain is not comparative because voting up does not enact the plan either. But negative to embrace generative pessimism within this space instead of draining energy. Think about governmental fiat. What ifs? We all have to focus our energy on spiritual practices that can regenerate and change youth here and now. 2 is 4 life is wrong. Indigenous movements are forced to conform to cellular modes of legal government and structures to be perceived as legitimate that pathologizes Indian resistance and causes violence. Even if state engagement could be good, we want the usage of it instant, and we don't have an agency over the state in a space like debate. But LIFA does not vote after they endorse bottom-up organizing, which is the complete opposite of the one he sees top-down policy implementation. Now 2C 5 answers to Ramadan are relevant. We're no longer going for KYP. 2C 6 fiat good is 0. 1 is apolitical. Skips over the steps of getting the plan through the doors of Congress, overcoming heresy and congressional lock, and fails to answer the question how to organize, who to organize with, etc. 2 is out around Sauls. If fiat is good for that, they can do it anywhere else to reap its benefits. Doing it here is bad because it's not for us. View this is as an independent pick
that solves all their offense. It's clear because in the 1C, Gotham said that they engaged in research out of round, so that solves all their offense. In route links to their performance. Now, way proximity, fourth is their choice. They can fight against everyone else in every other round, not just against us, because we said it's fine. Our offense is supposed teams being disappointed. This is totally incoherent. Repetition is not good. Our offense comes first, explain above, and frame again the 1 hour explains why we're better. 2C7, read is wrong. Again, our link isn't to indigenous people wanting IP, but Greenhill's forwarding hypotheticals in this space. We agree. Indigenous people can access and have and seek IP, but disagree with their presentations out of this debate. Even if indigenous people want the plan, the question your ballot and Greenhill must answer is: what do those indigenous people want Greenhill advocating their cause in a competitive spirit of debate where they skip over the steps of policy mediation, as opposed to pursuing genuine advocacy for reform? Even if tribes want the plan, their reps of sway code to stand and reinforce calls of North 18 to hold before indigenous people government will induce retreat previous policy season as a facade to address concerns on systemic notion or whether merits of indigenous groups. No, I now trusting foundations of the sway code and resulting in quarter city operation that implemented top down and cannot heal this solid divide and reinforce it. Now, 2C8, they said legal recognition is good. It's a downward spiral of empirically based indicators of material progress are insufficient to resolve a systematic grammar solving this whereas there's no word for how political victories have restored native attempts to self-define without prior settled recognition or bring back thousands of dead native languages. Now, there's an empathetic relationality link. Extend that now. The 1C's form betrays any possibility of genuine solidarity. Existing extension of a Western academic gaze in which they assume that some American political position could do something necessary for turning point and movements on the ground. There's no question of link. 1C correct explicit as a quote. IP law has been the leading area for petition claims to protect indigenous people from devastating consequences, and 1C Smith pities how, quote, indigenous peoples are having to fight for a harder on a variety of fronts. The implicit imperial assumption that invisible native population lacks something that we can grant them. This is Western paternalism. Greenhill. Our opposers are acting like empathetic activists that have the tools to make those that are dying in the status quo succeed. Wrong. They self-reported that they're episcopally disinvested and don't believe in this argument. So you know it's in bad faith. Fiat good is not responsive because we isolated a power question that their activism will never be mobilized. That guarantees Greenhill will, quote, never be activations in the possible decolonization despite 1C Smith's assertion proven by studies in government simulation. Varga 20, the simulation of the Western constitutional practice of government installation place students in the roles of leaders rather than activism. Disciplines for the limited position with the government hierarchy that too far from the authenticity there are meant to portray give students a false sense of agency. There's also instrumentalization, like even in the content of field debates, it can be valuable in anti-racist that level of form, it's colonial, abuses, material harms that indigenous people face in status quo toward devices to be instrumentalized for the purpose of debaters who accomplish pedagogical objectives in common opinion politics that cause intercriminal violence. There's two internal links. One is abstraction, the distant nature of sampling, indoctrinates debaters into the belief that's into suffering. It's a commodity to be treated for personal success because debaters are the model of debate only interact with those forms of suffering. From the academic gaze of debate, it's not to say we can never talk about suffering, but it can be discussing with the full knowledge that one has zero ability to combat the suffering. I playing debate as just a game where we know fiat solution, Italy renders status, a solely token to be used for one's own benefit. The one here cannot say no link. One is correct to discuss how, quote, each time infringement happens, the heritage itself dies a little and with its people and say, quote, the most urgent reason to establish that control is to preserve their peoples and maintain their vitality to its paternalism. Sampling constructs a sovereign self at the core of decision making. They conclude that they know what's best for others. The problem with fiat debaters are deprived of never an interpersonal understanding of the suffering of groups external to the social occasions, which is that attempts at relation, nothing collapse on unwanted paternalism, impact a spirit burden, the model turns suffering into an object of fascination be tokenized in exchange for ways to go 17. For 42% of the liberal reason we have the reason that doesn't really exist or exists in the imagination of those who have sense of relatively read some can confirm POC or two sense of filter and entering after experience that one can exit with fearless free some material lines of people see as part of research as game which will that the experience reason is not a game nor character resume is treating as such fearless lives of such people in terms of the object of racist find a faster shared solution of reason is about stores something against a better understanding cost. These whose lives become playground for others gratification. Role playing traumatizes students and fearless as harms. 23 role playing reproduce critical class will place only fail to achieve their intended purpose, but so re-traumatize experience and trivialize their present trauma. There's also a globalization link. The one sees theorization of globalization as the end of indigenous culture. Mystery is 400 years of settlement that ensured indigenous peoples and cultures never had access to boundaries. The link is clear. 1C Smith describes how, quote, as cultural boundaries dissolve, we're witnessing a, quote, increased quantities of commodification of culture. This misattributes essentially to colonization and cultural alienation and globalization, metaphysically erasing the legacy genocide, reject that on face, even if they be subject information. It's violent to deny history and talk on cultural erasure not to a market mechanic, grouping indigenous cultural tradition into a market mechanics legible to Western sense is definition of assimilation and precludes collectivity and community and creative communities. Whiteness may operate. The capitalist strives for individual success, but native communities do not. The fact is resilience. They reinforce and racialize the possible expansion of a strong native subject able to resist alone in the face of oppression. Now, there's also a temporality link, even if the plan has possible benefits out of inherency, like a Republican majority in Congress or extra opposition to increasing IP protection, there's barriers to the plan ever actually in the real world, weighing the benefits and impacts of a hypothetical plan is addicted to a could-be temporality. The LC encircles an idealist future that can never be fulfilled through speech acts, which turns the case. One arrow state policies will solve. These people cannot access that because they're burned out now. The arrogant assumption that debaters can afford to start by learning IP pros and cons as adolescents before demanding the modest reform ensures those with the agency eternally spin their wheels while ensuring native genocide. That causes rollback. Even if the plan could be good for indigenous people, it gets rolled back post-fiat because of Republicans in Congress, racists and colonizers in the government, and it appears that the proof the U.S. will never fall on its commitments to indigenous people. When one year says durable fiat solids, you should flag it on your flow because this is the link to our offense. That's stuff how indigenous people are supposed to purely fiat progress in the colonial world. The premise of durable fiat is imagining something good while knowing that the plan could be actualized. It's a settled move to innocence to absolve white guilt and escape accountability, proof by how they use indigenous suffering for the ballot, despite full knowledge of the debate is game, and to make just and deeper subjectivities. Roll tape. Concede consequences of the good and we need, we're not going for it, but counter is good. Counter sure, we get what we get in no 20 counterbalance. What is negative flexibility topic? Is that bias? They can strengthen any industry as like stable mechanisms, topic disasters here, so that's my fine. Like case selection, infinite path prefers last case, multiple options are key to test the app from multiple angles. Who is arbitrary? Number 3. It's unfair. Dex research and artificial insulates them for rigor. There's no offense. 1. Skew is level, case TD is in speed, 2 is diminished utility. Adding advocacies results in strategic liabilities, 3 is no offense. They get infinite permanence and straight charts. 4 starts in counterbalance, reject the argument, the punch it, shift it their crime, just make all the off case dispo if they win condo. Now dispo sucks. 1 is consensus. There is none. 2 is can't solve. Next is force forms to 3. And 2 is dictates the block. 3 is logic, proving the kind of bad. Does not prove the app is good. 4 is creativity, having a fallback causes innovation. And 4 is you have to carefully be clapped when you see to be generic. 5 is flexibility. Next you can't read amendments that link to counterbalance because the app will concede them. Kid Kant, we didn't read it, flow better. It's finals of the TOC, but there's no offense about reading him because we didn't read him in the 1C. And if they connect us to about us just inserting it in the 1C, we all seek new answers. Rejecting the argument of team is sufficient and concede you should reject the last 3. Go to the black battalion. Concede the perm. Feminine was answered in the twin C. The fiat good cards were back turned in the twin C, and we didn't abandon liberty potential just because they have no agency over the planet here. So this is linked to our abstract argument. And 0 is to evidence. Reject the argument of the human theory, and we'll concede that the restricted economy is false. So there's no offense about that. Christianity. Concede the perm. Feminine was answered in the twin C. There's no difference. Cost obligation. The K was not difference politics, so it's all irrelevant. Reject the argument of the team. Psychoanalysis. Sorry. Concede the perms. Here this cannot be classified because it's not about pseudo-colonialism, but unconscious in general, so prefer specificity. We also never made a psychoanalytic claim on the psycho, okay, but a semiotic claim, which was in Tunzi.
You said the alternative is like pessimism. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so generative pessimism isn't literally just like we should like resign ourselves into the status quo, we can't do anything. But instead, we should embrace communal practices inside of this space that we actually have the agency over to resolve.
What do those communal practices look like?
So it looks like,
What are the
like in debate or like in general?
In debate.
In debate. So that looks like investing in practices that we have the agency to control and the agency to affect. So not fiated hypotheticals that we know we can't affect in any way, shape, or form.
Why do you think we cannot affect like things outside
Because,
of debate?
so a couple of things. One is inherency. The plan is like totally nuked by a bunch of barriers in the status quo that you isolated in the 1C. And
how
2
does the plan make
is that,
it worse?
What?
How does the plan make it worse?
We never said the plan makes it worse. We
Well,
just made a
that's
structuring
the
argument
uniqueness.
about why you have no agency over your stuff in here.
What I believe I have agency to lobby for Congress.
Does voting app pass the plan? The answer is no. So.
Well,
no
voting app allows me to be confident that I can go to Congress and pass the plan. Is
Well,
that so?
we've answered that in the 2C with all our arguments that fiat doesn't train those skills because it skips over the hardest steps of policy implementation and trains us to refer to a higher authority like the state for change to ever take place in the first place.
Okay, so you've made a prescriptive claim about how people broadly view fiat. Why does that apply to individuals?
It's not about how people view fiat. We've like made a bunch of arguments about why
like
the
you've
specific
said,
use of
you've
it is
described
bad.
what fiat is, but you've not said why everyone has to approach fiat the same way,
Yeah,
or why
so,
fiat is the end
so
point for
your
everyone.
offense about like this makes 0 sense. So our offense isn't about like embracing or like using fiat in a certain way, or like fiat or like subjectively. Argument is that your specific use of it inside of this instance was bad with every single link that we sent in.
Okay, generative pessimism, what does it do for indigenous people in this space?
So inside of this space, it generates communal strategies of resistance.
what?
It builds social energy, allows people to talk about their struggles and what they have the agency over inside of this
Why
space.
is the app not a description of those struggles and
Because
like a
it
starting point for
places those struggles
discussions?
within the lens of a hypothetical policy action that will never occur.
But why are those discussions not in and of themselves
Yeah,
good?
so we think those discussions can be good, but every single link indicates why using it in a fiated context and like a gamified context as well is bad because it
Okay.
abstracts native suffering for the
The-
purposes of a ballot.
Lightfoot stuff, you said this misunderstands history. Could you explain this?
That wasn't on the Lightfoot card.
Or
That was on the
globalization thing.
Oh, that? Yeah, so the globalization link says that it's in fact turned to the 1C's invocation of like globalization as a detonated culture. This argument says that it misattributes the real root causes of colonialism and it denies history and erases the legacy of
Okay, doesn't history have proximate causes, etc.? There are multiple factors to what colonialism
Yeah, but we
is.
in fact turned like prescribing nativeness into market mechanisms and describing the reason why region
do you
happens
think
is
market
because of
mechanisms
capitalism.
contribute to colonialism?
Yeah, sure, but
Okay,
in the
then-
1AC, describing it as only that is bad.
When have we said that it's only that?
Well, like quotes, like you didn't isolate anything else. It's not a link of omission because you in fact turn your starting point.
It's free work. Panel.
Give me a second.
Where are you? Framework also was justified the benefits of presenting the one sees a precondition defending the effects of the plan prefer imperial time design. Even if the plan has possible benefits, added to inherency like congressional good law, and expert opposition to IP rule, this barrier to the plan ever actualizing the bureau. Greenhill posit hypothetical to the full knowledge of the advantage cannot be solved. Repetition compulsion turns case defeat addiction of a one is type added the recast failures of possibilities. Driving surplus pleasures to make it complacent. Cost benefit analysis the plan is too little too late. For indigenous students might be dead tomorrow. Their deliberative skills ensures that their constituents repetitively compose till genocide. That's not correct. Links are decides from the twin seed, the index and airplane, which is the often against your model. Now fairness. First we meet, we don't meet the plan to get it. Once you justify fiat and our term restricts case to those of only fiat removing unpredictable case or random portion of the money C. Second, there's no offense, infinite prep first and last. And after a check, you're really asking them to defend their introduction of the money C. Third, but reckoning the game is good if it's preserved. There's no impact of fairness if the role is a competition geared to train students to racism. Fourth, unfairness, inevitable differentials in speed, resources, and coaching. Sure, no model's fair or the game is globally fair. And we also decide to ensure reciprocity. Fifth, fairness cannot be issues good because competition is ever evolving. There's no procedural plan focus role for next. Predictability is in bad faith because there's decades of fiat debate. Six, next flex outweighs after confine the status quo. Sandbag till the truth and there's zero unified generics and lie. And this sounds like it escape evens playing field. Seventh, wiki checks. They know that we go for the K. It makes it predictable and fair. They had all of today to prep the bracket. Came out last night. 8th, cops decide we don't trust you. Call it a procedure to constrain us. It's a tactic of whiteness to get agents out the activity. 9th, engagement solved. Ontology, broadening terms, permutations, or dispatch to all proves after contents, literature checks. That call is the most substantive disagreement with an indigenous copyright now. So it's all obviously predictable. 11th, after critical engagement is inevitable because the bidders want to learn. Banning case on the net guarantees that the read K asks instead, which turns off your offense. Since they're more unfair to avoid more clash. At worst, prefer interpretation if and only if the one see posits the benefit to the introduction of the speech chat. This is a conditional extension of our interpretation that solves your offensive goals. It guarantees predictability. There's no paradox. Paradoxical decisions are good. Stranic 19 paradoxical decisions that enable people to transfer all favor, make liberating decisions without any scruples. The set up in your crop that don't skip from condition of pathological base because you understand nothing can be worse than now nothing can be lost mitigating different directions. The list is something private the resolution of absolute parties do not work step ahead into rebellious favor. Even if you're wrong about that, here's defense. One compromise guards 21 procedure fairness not concerned with whether the outcome of the decision was fair, but rather whether the process fair fairly concluding to reject procedural fairness is not paradoxical but merely a result of prioritizing alternate forms of fairness. 10, 15 the paradoxical decision to be we can forego maximization of fairness to obtain the desired outcome seems counterintuitive to assume the district criteria is fairness bias and the fairness perception by the human sex out unfair offer decision can be made with fairness without being irrational paradoxical decision or no paradox to merely caused by shifts into a different fairness equitable contradictory logical principles for a fairness assessment decision appears to be paradoxical when a person considers however equitable outcomes unfair the decision appear to be paradoxical but caused by shift in fairness possession rather than irrational logically consistent decisions can be made using fairness disparity or both while being paradoxical. Now clash fairness defense is internal link defense clash that was above but here's some more clash is wrong. One our impact outweighs what we clash over is more important than clash in a vacuum. Racism good or intervention is good produces clash but is epistemically bankrupt. Second natural limits the 1C needs to disagree with some aspects of the 1C otherwise the perm is a TKO defending the app guarantees clash exists. Third moving the app is good reciprocity the new ways consequences treats us as cheating frauds to demand the community better be better and sidelines violence felt here for the impacts of hypothetical that can never outweigh harms outside of that precludes meaningful participation in debates benefits. Fourth, competition decide. The assumption that we're here for purely competitive reasons is patrolizing assumes that we have the same motivations as you. Reject the team. Fifth, creativity decide. Constraints on neg inhibition. Ensure stable debates that never garner new revolutionary tactics. Sixth, pure audits. Don't view affirmative isolation remains racist hatred, the deployment, and this charge should be understood as part of a continuous conquest to kick Asian debaters out of the activity. Now, the ballot. TOC finals is unique. One, it's the most spectated round of the season right now into recording and it's being between the two most competitive teams this year, which means to produce the greatest effect on the community as debaters and coaches view it as a template for our debate ought to be in the future. Second, people can't focus prep and lectures on what won at the TOC and not what lost. Each on winning the TOC on textual topicality last year led to everybody learning about it at camp and reading it this season. Third, elevate your ballot to the level of critical change is believing the biggest round of the season has minimal impact and provides agency and cause exhaustion. Now the ballot is good. Argumentation involuntarily alters your beliefs and shapes your epistemic commitments. Casey 20 adversarial behavior includes adopting standpoints for strategies not some reason encouraging Russian friends in competition. Those who hold not be maybe in opposition. And opposition does not follow the need to be psychological opposition. Argumentation and competitive rule about exchange to offer the others are more influential beliefs. Main virtues and maybe shows that all influence others evidence are given no voluntary option to change your posture relative to discriminates other can alter my beliefs or commit structure belief alter only an initial adoption. Two parties exchange speech as the game you can exchange with after position jobs and secular position works against both the person you should noting that does not entail for non-forcible actions exist without any better structure feature or argument where adversaries because of the lack of control over my own beliefs. Now decision transformative and stimulate partially to modify modified with beliefs. Druckmann, 21, competition when two arguments class and cancel, however, could be rendered preference. People to go for the opposite argument that's perceived strongly present, others can simply not number, questions receivers see how others react and follow suits. Habits are internalized, and intervention for Greenhill needed immediately. Massey at 21, how does a neurological dynamic successor? When the sensor motor coordination is more, as performance more, repeated to become a simple, not exercise one subject, ignores body, little schemes for engagement, self, communication, value, system, appropriate environment, depends on social research, individual and active describing, sort of most experience, physiological, others modified, neurobiological, dynamics, culture, norms, internalized, well, what is expected to guide action, performance, subjects, assessment, better words, explicit nodding, implicit different children, acquire habits of mind and committee if they fail to behave, they will be sanctioned, those who turn those develop disposition to participate, and correct those who don't. 10 seconds.
Oh, we don't feel the all.
We don't feel the all, so there's no link to see any of that stuff. It's crazy, man.
Other cards?
Yours just a K.
Is there a particular order?
Framework first.
Framework first.
I'd like 1 second to fix my first one like that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Alright, I'm good.
Good. Panel's good. Jerry. Yeah. Good. Great.
Framework evaluate play desirability, impact is fairness, both teams align in this intrinsic value, speed times line, judges, structures, every benefit of the game. 4 frames. 1 is every argument requires a fair evaluation. It's a logical precondition to the activity. The reason why we know their impacts are bad is because they're all unfair. Second, you can agree with the neg, but vote out because their impacts do not require the ballot. Third is presumption, decking fairness, implicates the veracity of every truth claim. We're also going to concede non-res 3 off of condo with 0 all their offense because their framework interprets non-resolutional and therefore it's not predictable. And there's no imperialism. Decide will be done on fiat good, but repetition is good. Debates, process of iteration. Losses to determine if their advocacy is desirable. There's also no link. No one is disappointed when the opposite does not happen because no one's under illusion that it will. Yes, link. It's not about solely using fiat, but what your model justifies. It's infinitely aggressive. Justifies picks out of authors and 1C highlighting as per the 2C infinite prep is framed out by the block. They have Capgate, link controversy, econs spillover, etc. Wrecking the game is bad. 1, debate is not intrinsically racist. Second, the bell cannot delete debate, which means it cannot solve for this offense. Loss may be inevitable. You should maximize it. Switch sides to our argument. Debaters do not believe in what they say. Disproving good faith argumentation. Competition evolving is not contextualized to this round. And again, everything is linear, uncrossed by stuff above. That the K is not predictable. Decades of fiat K also relevant because it's about your interpretation. We did not know that you would go for the K. We were prepping other teams last night, and again, it's an interpretation which excludes the consequences of the plan, which we think is bad. And it also answers their second predictability argument. We do not ban Ks. We are K inclusive, not K exclusive. Just think that they need material alternatives and unique links to the plan based off consequences. Their conditional interpretation is arbitrary. It's an arbitrary carve out and links all over the ref stuff that I did above because we have not proclaimed all of our fiat stuff as the sole reason to win this debate. They did not ask in cross-ex. Their card is wrong because it treats personal anecdotal experiences as proof that irrational or paradoxical decisions are universally good. The Dr. Target card is our point. We care about fair evaluation. Next card is also wrong. Procedural fairness is not paradoxical but reflects a deliberate prioritization of alternative fairness criteria over procedural one. Second is this clash. Only iteration teaches us to robustly defend our arguments against criticism, creates better advocates who can do the all. Natural limits was said above. We do not think that everyone here is here solely for competition, but competition is an overcoding ideal proven by the paradox examples that above. In debate being a game, our interpretation is not just stale debates, but rather debates where you can embody different alternatives like micropolitical action on the net, advocate for strategies in the F, etc. that depend on critical thinking. There's no racist history. Our model's not exclusive, which is not above. And Rory wants to fiat the plan, which is another independent reason to vote for our affirmative term. There's also no offense. One battle fails to shape subjectivity. All comes like family. Friends, religion outweigh debaters switch sides. Eternalized losses, technical failures lie. Read arguments they do not believe in. Druckmann is wrong. It proves that competitive persuasion shapes beliefs through ongoing argument clashes, not isolated one of decisions like a battle. Describing the battle as the only way to deal with injustice creates a dependency that backfires when they inevitably lose debates and leaves them clueless when they leave debate. TOC finals is not unique. When Lhasa beat NBA on FMIR, did not set a wave of vast designed to respond to that K. When Sharma won on signing statements, it did not radically reshape how the community thinks about competition. People are motivated by winning. Debate is a game, it's a competition. We're all here to win the TOC. Presuming other motives is impossible to verify. Do not elevate your battle. One is paternalism. Describing the battle as the only way to deal with injustice creates a dependency that backfires when they inevitably lose debate. Second is guilt or switch, and pointing out the easy speech acts are enough to remedy. Cycle troops off with further, more effective reform. Now, their theory is wrong. We do not fall for gaslighting that we dropped ontology. The entire YDC is the fact of change can happen, and they've mishandled more warrants. One is agency. Their theory maps colonialism as static and immovable, which denies agency of indigenous organizations that have a proven track record of successful resistance and promotes a self-defeating cycle that denies progress. Political interventions like the UN Declaration and the output that policy-oriented optimism is only when it successfully resist colonial power structures. The alt alone gets co-opted. That's life, but second is specificity. Only legal recognition helps voice collective support and changes our ability to function by not being subjugated by the state. That's Butler. Third is misrecognition, both legally and intersubjectivity. A political practice is key for liberation and self-actualization. Unreflexive and static views fail. Fourth is the alt is worse. Failure to enact copyright protection causes cultural significant traditions to vanish altogether. Institutional engagement promotes mutilation and distortions of indigenous work, as well as uncompensated exploitation. Voting out recognizes that harm and solves it. Do not artificially inflate their offense. That was also done about fiat may be apolitical, but it's the process of imagining things that we think is valuable. Fiat is also good. It teaches debaters to become social critics and challenges the status quo. The structured debate creates argumentative agency, research skills, and detailed advocacy, which enhances our understanding of the world. They link back as well because they imagine it all and explain why it should happen. Otherwise, everyone will lose. The plan will not happen. No impact, no debater. Please have fiat is real, or the plan will happen as a consequence of voting out. Out of round is not solved. We think debate is game, and the competitive incentives overcoat every part of it. Both those want to be in TOC finals, love debate, and want to propose solutions in this space. It's also not our choice. Remember that we only started with fiat because it's a valuable political heuristic, in our opinion, and they reverse causally said that was bad. There are other K teams who think that this is violent, and again, we think that fiat is good for debate, which is not about there's no abstraction. If I could not use abstraction, then we would never fairly debate solutions. We would be stuck arguing about only what already exists instead of imagining ways to make things better. Fiat also reduces distancing, criticizing policy, teaches us to be more empathetic, and to take consequences of our policies and care about more than our immediate reality. They've also dropped that God affirms the plan. They read the K. We agreed God is the highest being. God thinks that copyright is good because of creative ownership, which encourages human participation and divine creativity. No paternalism. Their card is wrong and offense. It says that racism is something that can be played, which causes more suffering into a self-serving experience. Role playing is also no link because we do not think the government, because we do not think that we are the government now. Uniqueness will stop. Generative pessimism does nothing for it is people who are advocating for the plan now and allow white people to sign off on accountability. Links are all non-unique because it is people maintain their own IP and litigate them in modern courts. Second, they drop Fernandez. Role playing the express of what governments do. One is he actually created social energy to continue actions and organizing. The permutation about there's no reason why both cases are mutually exclusive. They've dropped an impact on focus on debate space, marginalizes people outside who experience labor, hunger, abuses, which results in elite capture and does nothing. Yes, public domain. The app is generative pessimism. The plan does not happen until we begin discussions. It is people here. Gridlock is not unique, but overcome by lobbying, protesting, learning, and durable fiat. Google versus Oracle proves the court is moving in this direction. There's no pick requires the competitive incentives of debate, which was also in abundance. They've also dropped an internal link. Activists need research, argumentative refinement, and imagination to succeed, which only the plan does without ceding to the right.
Just the K.
You're starting with River.
Yeah.
Yeah, starting with River.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay. I didn't do that.
We're good.
Panel. You know?
This debate is a kill. No matter to our grand sake about just people suffering status quo, they have no agency to change those things, but acting as it does is linked to all of our offense, hold the line, other rounds, informs outside debate, solve other activist arguments, but only we have intrinsic offense, just model one side of debate, which should be the threshold, they should evaluate their offense framework, as well justify the benefits, to pretending they want to see part evaluation, that means negating the value. If you have a negative win condition, now the 1 year drop independent offense for our model under clash, you ought to make case if you want any risk of a link, any else within the ethical transgressions, and species being written away because the impacts of on scholarship and make can never always have the impacts on a larger scale out there, absolutely the case, technical about research comes justified, as long as the plan is a good idea, greening my dangerous violence here now, which always almost me that capital waste fairness in clash, 1 year drop, and minority participation impact, which compares to the game in the first place. Those of you debaters to have fair debates over the clash over the first place, which flips all their offense to the fairness paradox. We agree racism is bad because it's unfair. That means we access their offense with an external impact. 1 year one, no paradox. Ham, and says your decision would only be paradoxical if you use multiple decision criteria, but you're solely using fairness. Racism is unfair, and we have consequential reasons to about resolves that fairness impact. Insofar as their fairness impact is determined by outcome, not process, i.e. unfairness only happens to the outcome. And voting for us, it wouldn't be paradoxical to fairly reject their fairness impact because our fairness impact outweighs. Also, it's compartmentalized. We can value some parts of fairness impact evaluation without valuing others' outcome. Their offense their answer made literally zero sense and proves our offense because you can fairly evaluate under argument, which means there is no paradox in evaluation. 1 year shoot, no valid pick. The valid is key. Extend that now. The 1 year drop this debate is about models of debate, so you really have to compare the relative merit of ours versus theirs. If ours is better vote negative, you would never vote on double down. Indicate strength of debate because you're comparing competing interpretations. 1, elevate bad logic, which unconditionally reject racist practices. Demand for you to be 100% certain they are about spills up to reject racism as ethical blackmail that justifies violence as long as there's a risk you can't solve, causing exhaustion. For minorities who are told racism is acceptable, it's not paternalism. We haven't said everyone assumes about sets norms, but it's good for the judge to practice if it does. To hold us to a higher ethical standard, no guilt situation. Making this argument alone is enough because it reminds us to not get complacent. Also, nobody thinks that voting neg ends all racism, so it's not comparative. 2 is TOC finals. It's the most spectated round of all this season, which is that it produces the greatest effect on the community. As debaters and coaches view as a template for how debate ought to be in the future. Gut check. This round certainly hasn't happened. Even if just Marshall lost winning 2 years ago, it doesn't count because they fielded the all 3 yes subject information. Casey assumes all of their answers, like debate being an adversarial competition bound by rules and giving speeches. In a game like exchange, it says despite that, individuals have no control over their own beliefs and are solely informed by others and external sources that solves our offense because debaters become more ethical under our model and because confronting abstraction is a win condition, which assumes every single answer, including double down, all causes, etc. Because even if they think debaters won't change their minds, debaters have zero control over that, and the K acts against the role, and the ballot can act against the role as well. But again, you should elevate autonomy, especially in the 2C, because anything else causes exhaustion. Because you have to ask yourself, when anything else causes exhaustion, 1 year 3, there's no truth testing, winning internal defense. It means it's a non-starter. They had the chance to debate arguments, assuming their false eschatology. Anything else is equivalent to refusing to drop this side. Because you have contested, unpredictability is level, no new competition arguments, impact, who asks, etc. Now, non-race theory does nothing. 1, we meet, framing case in theory. It's judge instruction that we justify with all of our other arguments. 2 is every other justification we made is a reason why our framing interprets good. 3, it is resolutional theory because it defines the burden and the app and the neg win conditions. I reiterating resolutional mandate, no clash offense, dropped our impact outweighs what we clash over is way more important than clashing a vacuum racism good or average good. Produce bad clash, but it's epistolally rank up and creates racist advocates. Creativity does that. Also drop constraints on negativation and ensures stable debates that never garner you. The revolution tactics that we learn to clash better than they do. The fiat gates prove clash is inaccessible to native debaters because they're psychologically impaired. Now, muting the app is good. That was explained above. Now, extend defensive advantage to clash. 1, we only allow K's of fiat. This was dropped in the 1 year. Avoids our offense about infinite part questions because we cannot pick random parts because we only get the K fiat. Justice round is illusion. And about is K explained above. You're comparing models debate. 2, infinite part first last page. And now choice check. 3, neck flex outweighs. Asking call status quo. Same back to the 2AC and there's zero unifying generics. And D is like unique as K evens playing field. The K evens playing field. 3, 4th. Fairness comedy intrinsic good. It means competition is ever evolving and there's no procedural plan because rule for negative predictability is in bad faith because there's decades of fiat debates. It wasn't apparent on our wiki. And we debated Greenhill before, so it's fair in this round and under our model debate. Now extend the link debate now. Extraction link is a kill. There was zero reason Greenhill needed to present indigenous suffering into debate when they said that they'd done research over it in other forms and that debate is the game. We come back to this needless ramification of indigenous suffering. Extended proper the model that reduces the material suffering of indigenous communities and rhetorical devices for students the committed sphere debate to accomplish pedagogical objectives and become opinionated and influence doctors debaters to believe that indigenous suffering is a quantity to be recognized for personal success. Discussing our suffering with the full knowledge that one's actions cannot change that doesn't make us more empathetic, but makes us an egotistical subject. Our arguments is like reporting indigenous suffering into quantities for the cost benefit analysis. It's a stroke of devaluing that frames indigenous people as invisible, which physically and psychologically traumatizes those individuals. Inability we can lose motivation and still win because of how negative sources as rejection of Greenhill's inbound reduction of indigenous communities to a blip on a graph. Remember, it's also the offense on framework. One was clear that links are discussed because it's like anti scenario planning, which is the offense against our model debate. That means winning a link is sufficient to win everything, including framework. Now, the answers were incoherent. We never said we could never debate on solutions. It's explicitly about the distant nature of scenario planning against the key internal like they can also do so in other venues, which they have agency over perform fiat elsewhere. Fiat reduces this thing is irrelevant. It's not internal like belief is also relevant. This isn't the quantum K. Now, God is a neg warm. What he negates. If you want to do it, he would have already. The application is neg presumption. 2 is framework brackets. They must win it first. Otherwise, the plan good is out of your jurisdiction. God's affirmation is hollow. We get this because the 1 year class application was new and they didn't apply it to the K and the 2AC. Fernandez is wrong. Drop every single reason why fiat does not train skills. It skips over the hardest steps to get the plan. Do the doors of Congress overcome inherency and gridlock, etc. So it was zero how to actually make ideas. Also, they dropped the passivity card that says that they train us to defer to the state for change to ever take place in the first one. Kicking the all no perm. Framework brackets say Roy wants the fiat, it's unwarranted. We don't want it, and we want it's bad for the community. Now, not going for ontology. This is an offer for them because we're no longer saying that progress is impossible. You stop fiat, and it's not the means of actual progress, which 1 year missed vote on that, but they also dropped our framework distance, so any risk can link outweighs.
and can vote AF alone on an impact turn to their framework interpretation. The block brushed off cross applications from other flows, so you should not overconnect or connect the pieces for them. First is uniqueness, is AF. Generative pessimism is the status quo for white people who refuse to take accountability for other people who are advocating for the plan now. Voting next signs off on a ballot that allows political inaction because we can't, quote, imagine a suffering, we can't imagine affecting it. Complacency is violent and is try or die to orient ourselves towards people outside of our social locations. It internalize their arguments because they place themselves on pedestals on pointing out that we don't do anything when they are the ones that sanitize resistance in the first place. Second is that fiat flows out. This is really, really important because they've dropped this for 3 straight cases. The Fernandez evidence in the 1AC says that role-playing the express of demands on what we want to see actualized creates the social energy to continue actions and organizing. That proves that activists like the thought experiment of fiat to create an endpoint to that action. It allows them to care about something through research and develop a relevant political strategy to solve. The thought experiment of debate is really good. It affirms certain strategies like the app, but it also creates a social energy for people like me to use to advocate the app in other locations other than debate. Other than debate, they've dropped the competitive incentives that the debate game and debate space creates are necessary for the research and necessary practice that activists create. Third, the app is, this is the internal takeout. The app is a prerequisite which flips your try or die calculus. Activists need research, argument, refinement, and imagination to succeed. Only focusing on what we can control in debate results in the right cracking down on the dearth of knowledge that liberal students have and fractures minority coalitions, especially when people are rolling back to DEI, taking away things from indigenous people. These are all structural issues that they cannot combat if you only generate pessimism in the status quo in a debate space. Rather, it is try or die for us to create the necessary social movements to work outside. Obviously, we are under zero assumption that the plan happens, but it is something that is good and it creates a necessary advantage. They also do not get to make universalizing prescriptive claims about how we actualize benefits outside of this round, and dropping the Fernandez evidence is a TKO because it literally says scenario planning is good to create social energy. Only evaluate the plan's desirability. This fairness outweighs first is shared interest. Victory is the shared desire of both of us and Northview, which means that they have agreed to the mutual contract of fairness. They point out drop some set analytics respect the time rate setter flag this. They have dropped the rejecting fairness, which collapse all impact calculus because you have to conduct a fair assessment of every argument on the flow. Second, they've dropped the only reason we know that ontology is true or that indigenous people are suffering is through fairness. The reason why we know impacts are bad is because those are all unfair. The ballot is app offense. The only thing it does is create a win or a loss, and fairness is the only impact that depends on it. They say minority participation impact not dropped. We explicitly said that their model is worse given unpredictability and that the ballot cannot resolve this. They've dropped it independently. The app is good for me because I want to feel the plan and it grants me agency. The fact that you have to determine that versus their impact is something that is psychologically bankrupt, and you should not make that decision for me. Rather, you should affirm my agency because that is something you can tangibly solve within this communal generation of space, which means their interpretation do not fall for drops and cards. They've dropped fairness. It's not paradoxical, but reflects a deliberate prioritization of alternative fairness criteria over procedural ones. Outcome, not process, is our argument. We care about the process of fair evaluation. Do not compartmentalize that fairness. The point of the game to preserve a 50-50 shot at winning, and we've had clear examples that also rely on the main aspects of vote. You should not elevate their offense. First, drop paternalism. Describing the ballot is the only way to deal with injustice creates a dependency that backfires when they inevitably lose debates and leave them clueless when they leave debate. This also causes school dissuasion. Judges feel good voting negative, thinking they've done their due diligence, which trades off with furthermore affecting reform, especially since they dropped the Taiwo evidence, which is that focus on debaters in this room trades off with tangible differences from people working outside who experience labor, hunger, etc. abuses, which we can only begin to think about if we think about the politics outside of this room that we may not be able to solve, but things that are good in thought experiment. Their interpretation is worse as per their own words. They say non-res theory interpretations are bad and not predictable. We conceded that this alone is a TKO because their framework interpretation is not resolutional, i.e. something we could have predicted when looking at the resolution. Our answer here is incoherent. The interpretation is not resolution. You can't refer back to their explanation. The burden is when we look at the resolution, could we have recently carved out a framework interpretation that they have provided? Third, also vote in truth testing. Checking fairness implicates the veracity of every truth claim. That's a drop dissent. They're dropping a dissent answer is nonsensical. Most dissents are fair because they disprove the consequences of resolutional access is a good idea. The other impact is clash. An internal link turns every fiat offense which they haven't grappled with. Two internal links. First, their interpretation is worse. Unlimited topics destroy carefully choreographed accountability and coherence over advocacies which impact turns their argument. Second, advocacy. Our interpretation is the only thing that allows students to find strategies, discover literature bases, and foster abilities to combat real-world criticism. You are in a privilege to learn about these things in the first place. Remember that this streak turns every single piece of offense. Northview has no response to this. Even if you think that fiat is bad, our interpretation supports as a commonality point through rigorous contestation to develop solutions to other problems. We didn't drop that it causes bankrupt advocates. We internally every single portion of this, saying that even if we are bankrupt, debating over it changes that. They also drop that our interpretation is K inclusive, meaning they get everything with the material, alt, and unique links. The interpretation is unpredictable. Drop that if what their interpretation justifies, which is unpredictable, author picks and highlighting. Remember that they can use this as offense, which takes out their warrant, but it's not an independent win condition. No creativity dissent. We said that you can embody different alternatives and take out and say they drop that they have the block on multiple other things like CAPK, lit base, and dissent. And the tar diet. No abstraction. We answered above links are not unique. Indigenous people are advocating for the plan outside. We do not reduce indigenous people to debate space. They've dropped that the plan is a form of generative pessimism in and of itself. itself, which zeroes all their offense. We are under zero assumption that the plan happens when we begin discussion of indigenous justice in this debate. You should warn us for better debating. We've read this app since the beginning of the year, and they have no referendum on the political apathy that I have done outside of debate, which reading is now solved. There is no offense. One ballot fails to shape subjectivity. To adopt alt causes like failing friends or religion. The no TOC when it wants to be MPA and FMAR. It didn't set up a name when we asked. There's no singular reason why that happens in this debate.
Y'all want cards?
Actually, Greenhill, send me for Nate.
I'll send it there.
Send your favorite there. And I can also just download the one in my bag. There we go.
Yeah, cloud.
I got a lot.
Mike, good coaching. 20 seconds. I used to only 3 The truth course. Come on.
Over here. Congratulations to both teams for reaching the final round of the 2025 Tournament Champions. The winner on a 2-1 decision is the Affirmative from Greenhill. Second place, Northview. Northview, how much do you all want to hear? Okay. I sat. Congratulations to both teams for making it to the finals. I don't know either of you all well, so I'm not going to say anything disingenuous, but I've now judged you both multiple times. You all are fantastic. I voted neg. I think the colonialist gamification of debate is violent and must be epistemically rejected on face. Here's how I parse two arguments. I started with the top of the 2AR, A, uniqueness. Generative test is the status quo for those who aren't advocating. This argument is much more persuasive in the abstract than I think it ended up coming to the debate. Here are my issues with it. 1, competitive game is key. I think that Northview has made a ballot pick argument that will be explained when deciding frameworks that lowers the threshold for offense. Debate is not key to mobilization. Research outside of the competitive form solves. Greenhill, for what it's worth, I thought for a while if I could justify an argument for you all, that if Northview wins ballot proximity and signaling, it cuts both ways, and the reason he has structure good, I decided that would be a bit too intervention-y, given not a 2AR line and also not responsive to their offense, since Northview operates at the level of form, not content. 2, apathy inevitable, bottom of decay. Meg has a structural inherency argument, which argument about preventing large-scale action. This to me is pretty persuasive and answers the most terminal level of app offense, which is mobilization good. The app cannot result in change, even if we are better advocates. There's things like congressional backlash that prevent anything from being implemented, but it does result in reducing indigenous communities to a pedagogical vector, which is both psychologically violent and egotistical, which must be rejected on phase. The next argument, fiat flows app. This is mainly focused between both the apathy inevitable argument and apathy inevitable argument. The 2NR and 2NC certainly answer Fernandez. In fact, the 2NC and 2NR answer Fernandez by names. It says it doesn't apply and doesn't assume the gamification of debate. I spent a lot of time here. The issue I had with this argument on a meta level is I think that the app needs to answer the neg offense for why this isn't the case. Even if I grant you this card full weight for warrant provided, I think that the neg is still ahead because of this backlash argument. Even if we learn the skills, we can never actualize things because competitive form bankrupts it, it makes it structurally impossible. It also leads to like suffering reps, which are bad as explained on the link, which means the terminal impact of the neg thing outweighs. There's internal link takeout was explained above. Okay, framework. I think the neg is winning a bunch of ticky-tacky defense that lowers the risk of half offense. A, they only allow case of fiat, not random parts, making predictable limits inherently small. Magnified by the fact that Northview has read this K all year. B, neg flex outweighs app flex. Infinite prep content choice, first and last, as well as the neg being terminally hosed because there are no good generics. You should have an inherent leniency for Northview. Fairness proper, all around solve their offense. No reason why TOC finals is key for Greenhill's offense. Because they said you could use fiat or learning and researching about the app in other spaces, not this one, which acts as persuasive link in defense for me. This also matters for the link proper, but that was explained kind of above. I started with the fairness paradox. I do not think compartmentalization is a killer. I think if the app one's practices are unfair, then it's a sufficient win condition. But I think this, which like will be explained kind of below, but I do think that this answers the best defensive component you have to Northview's arguments against you, which is the paradox, because like Northview says you can compartmentalize it, do technical adjudication, but not if the 1AC is bad. Truth testing is weird. 2AR example is the only reason we know ontology is true or false. Because of that, I think that doesn't really apply, especially because Northview has said that compartmentalization. There's minority participation, yes, no, bad doesn't feel very much like a Slayer. Unpredictably is non-unique given new plans. And new offense, so even if Greenhill could win a link term to this, could win a link term, there's no uniqueness for the link term, so try or die still flips negative. The next argument is app is good, impact turned by the links. Affirming individual agency. Didn't really understand the implication of this argument in this debate. Northview hasn't made the traditional microaggression argument, so I'm not sure why this applies. Paternalism and guilt dissuasion. None of these feel killer to me. I don't know what the 2AR terminal impact of these are, and there's floating 2NR defense to both. There's no guilt dissuasion. The argument solves it because it's about what you did and not about making us judges feel better. Tyro concept is smart, but I think you all are missing an internal link to give dissuasion. Paternalism is answered by the bad logic argument. I reject racist practices. Drop that. Any alternative to this justifies violence which causes exhaustion and internal link towards paternalism. Non-rest theory, drop we meet. It's inherently resolutional since it sets for the terrain for Act 1 conditions. Framing theory, shape it, and it's irrelevant. It's not theory, rather judge instruction. And then clash was answered by most of their defense above. Yeah. Oh, ballot signaling. I never understood the implication of this argument for either side. Northview, in truth, you could probably get rid of this argument. You've said to fiat basically models. I fiated a model for you all, and I concluded that your model is much better.
Alright, so I voted F. I just want to stress that I've judged you all so many times, and I've been like really proud to like see low Burrell like tremendously. Like judge you all since like you are like novices at some point at some of the time, and like it's really such an honor to do this. Like so, especially like Jerry, I've judged Jerry like so much, and like listening to like pretty much the exact name 2NC, 2NR over and over again for like the bazillion times. It was like great. I voted F because I think the F wins the affirmative debate and model debate is good to produce social energy and activism to combat violence against indigenous folks through an advocacy of copyright protection, which resolves and outweighs the next offense of exhaustion. And the next claims to being claim of F being racist. The next offense of exhaustion and racism is internal link termed by the F's use of fiat and claim of fairness. The two internal links that the neg goes for, that I extrapolate on my flow, is one, decline of minority participation, and two, that debate produces like is controlling and that causes exhaustion. The reason why I think this gets resolved is by the Fernandez evidence. Actually, I think like the F extension of this has been quite apparent. That like there are two internal links. One is use of fiat; it produces social energy, and two, that the use of fiat is key to be able to produce research. I think there's also a large prerequisite claim that the F has won in this case. That the F is a prerequisite to activism, that research produces those things to be able to do that thing, and that fiat is a way to do that. Because like while fiat, yes, like we like causes like there's like backlash and all those things, being able to research and fiat and all like fiat research and all those things and engage in like policy like in imagination is good for activists to be able to engage within the 1AC, especially in the context of copyright protection. Otherwise that leads to like general pessimism, which means that like we're ceding always to the right, and therefore like copyright protections for indigenous folk and appropriations are always inevitable, which means I think like fiat is the only way to resolve this, and it's good, and thus like rejecting the F doesn't really do much better at harm. Second is just like I think the F is winning a fairness impact that the negative interpretation is still just mooting the plan is still bad. I think like yes, well it's still about you get the fiat case, it still moots the debate, which kills the purpose of research and stable debates, which are still good. competition is good because it forces research skills that are tangible and beneficial from debate, and that is able to resolve the offense and the negatives for the end of the day, because like your offense are going forward, it's like pure exhaustion, just racism, and like the idea that like fiat is inherently racist. I don't think fiat is inherently racist, because the idea that fiat is key to both social energy and political understanding means that we're able to deposit those things. And the Fernandez card is pretty good, it's specific about debate compared to the Negs Vargas card, which is literally when you do government simulations, people just feel like that, like they don't feel like they do anything, and that's the case. The only warning I get about in the 2NR about the Fernandez evidence is one, like fiat doesn't do those things, but also like Fernandez is wrong and doesn't produce those skills without really a warrant or like a evaluation, like how it doesn't resolve like social energy, where the 1AR and 2AR are like quite good. So I should be particularly not evaluate the next framework, since it forces paternalism and guilt dissuasion, which are both bad, and triggers the next offense, since like we as judges would vote pretty easy way out and not really discuss actual policies and tactics to combat racism or exhaustion at the end. Now, the next thing I look at is the extraction link, which I thought is the better piece of the debate, because like one, it's a link about the plan and not the fiat K, and I think like this is like idea. And again, I've heard about this argument so many times, but I think like this is more I thought you should have gone more all on this and extended the all, to my opinion, and that's like answered a permutation in my opinion, because like this link is like pretty specific about the F and how it can link turn like the F as a whole, and like if you just win that representation, it's like it's good, because you can see like the idea of neg framing that indigenous violence comes first and that folks is bad. I think I just prefer like this, because like the F is just ahead on this, because the F is in terms of like how they have read pieces of evidence that indigenous folk have been demanding for this policy, as per the when I see Reed and Farley pieces of evidence, and how Rory has been able to read this F since the beginning of the year and building up their policy analysis through like understanding like, oh, reading the 1AC is good. The second is that like the fiat offense resolves the link, and that building those advocacy social energy skills is able to help advocate for indigenous folk better and not talk about indigenous people for the purpose of the balance. I think like the overall arching is just like the AF has a risk that like fiat is good compared to like a low risk of like any offense. I think the AF has one marginal risk that the affirmative like fiat is good for like resolving the links and like the impact that negatives go for the end. So, yeah.
I've never gotten to judge either, or any of you before, but this is a very fun debate to judge, and I'm glad I got the opportunity to. My decision is not very different from Jake's. I thought that the app, one, that their model of debate is good and creates good benefits through clash and fiat, such that the risk of a link, or even if there is a risk of the link, the app outweighs. I agree that proving fiat bad would be a sufficient win condition for the neg, but I think that the app is winning too much offense on their model of debate for me to vote on this. I think that the Fernandez, Lightfoot, and Butler evidence in particular are pretty good about the utility of the state and how it's good to engage the state even if we cannot immediately shape action. I do think it is also responsive to claims about competition through the notions of game design that are talked about in the Fernandez evidence, how we should not view the state through a monolithic lens, otherwise that creates a pessimism trap which would recreate the neg's impacts. The only thing different that I really have to say is I was also very confused about like this ballot proximity argument. I think that both sides were kind of agreeing that like the ballot could maybe do something, and I think that if the app has won, that their model creates good things, and that would be solved by the ballot as well.
Yeah, that all makes sense. Thank you so much for judging. Greenhill, congratulations.
Yeah, congrats.